Okay, so this is the week for the presidential election, but of course, economic data is what the market sometimes need to make up its mind on what's happened before and give you some idea of where things are headed. So the GDP fourth quarter numbers and then inflation on Friday. Let's check in with the FMDQ exchange place where Gbenga Shonaike, who is a fixed income dealer at Access Bank, is standing by to talk to us about the debt and the currency week. Gbenga, it's good to have you. Good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, thanks. It's nice to have you here. This is a very interesting week, isn't it? And the market, has the market priced in the elections already, or the market thinks there's still something there it wants to hear, including the inflation report and the fourth quarter GDP? Will they make any difference as to what your outlook is for this week?
Well, the elections were supposed to overshadow out any economic indices that come through during the week, which is the major event coming up this week. So the elections are really going to overshadow any economic indices that we expect to come out. For the market has been able to price in inflation and GDP typically because we don't expect anything significant to shift in those indices, just maybe slight improvements in GDP, and inflation to just rise slightly. And in terms of election, what we're seeing is that as against what typically happens to previous elections, where we see a huge reversal of these flows, of offshore flows, we're not seeing that this time around. We believe that the market, especially the offshore people, have already priced in that irrespective of who wins the election, there's going to be a perception of stability. In terms of economic policies that PDP, APC have been pushing out, is very similar to each other from what we've seen so far. So they've priced in that perception of stability. So we're even seeing some flows come into the system even on the eve of election, as opposed to typically what we see generally as in previous elections.
Yeah, so is it going to be take it slow, hold it steady for this week at the treasuries and bond market? I'm sure the central bank is waiting for another week of liquidity exercise and sale of treasuries, isn't it?
Yeah, from what we've seen is CBN has continued its own auctions. They're still mopping up liquidity aggressively. On the T-bill side, what we've seen as a result of those flows, a downward trend in yields on the short and medium term end of the curve. However, because of CBN's consistent auctions, the long end of the curve on the T-bill side has remained relatively stable because CBN is continuing to issue bills at 15%. So that means very much increased supply. So that remained at 15% levels. On the bond side, we've seen drop in yields from 15% level to sub 15% levels, currently averaging about 14.7, 14.8% levels on the bond side. So like I said, there's increased appetite for securities around 15% levels because irrespective of where people see depreciation at, even, let's say it gets to 400, irrespective of that, the T-bills or the positive carrying interest rates still provide profitable trades on fixed income side.
You think yes, a lot of activities at the treasuries market last week, but again, Friday, there's a bit of a very a big surge on FMDQ or Naira bonds, about 45, close to 46 billion Naira. That's the highest for last week.
Yeah, like I said, we've seen pretty much heavy trades on the bond side. Yields have gone downwards. Pretty much people taking positions ahead of the elections and seeing that there's a perceived stability. People expect these yields to get to about 13% towards mid-year, our lower levels of 14% levels typically. So what people are doing now, they're taking huge advantage of this opportunity, given that really there's really a perceived stability as regards our election cycle this time around than previous elections.
A quick one and a final one. What's your take on liquidity levels for this week? What are you looking at?
We expect an home auction to come in today, as CBN's usual activity throughout the week. There's going to be a maturity of about 600 billion this week in terms of home bills and about 150 billion on PMA bills. So we expect both of them to be rolled over typically. We still expect CBN to even mop up more than what is maturing. So like CBN is really not taking any chances with liquidity in the system. They're mopping everything up, and we expect them to continue to do that at their usual rates.
Gbenga Shonaike of Access Bank. Thank you very much for speaking with us from FMDQ Exchange Place. Okay, so we change gears always to talk about equities. It was a very nice last week, a very week. We finished almost 3% on the North. We had close to 500 billion back in investors' portfolio. That was Temple Ashaju's stock market. So let's get this week started. Once again, the first hour of trading Temple, I like the early numbers. But first, the NLMR interface with the market on Sunday was a very big one, isn't it? It's the first of such we're seeing on the eve of elections.
Exactly. Yeah, well, you're right. It was the first, and it's happening on the eve of the election. It was actually something that a lot of the brokers had been trying to see come into reality about some 2 years ago. Incidentally, it happened on the eve of elections, and they talked seriously about a lot of issues, about the fact that the Securities and Exchange Commission up to date does not have a board. PENCOM also does not have a board because, again, you want to see a lot of the pension funds or pension assets coming into equity markets and, of course, the debt side of the market. So a lot of the brokers in attendance expressed their concern about that. And, of course, we got the Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment, talking extensively about what they will do. Yewande Sadiku of NIPC was also in attendance, and both of them talked extensively about how they will, going forward, engage more with capital market operators and, of course, the regulators to see how they can, collaborate and how they can bring about good products in the market, talk about infrastructure financing, infrastructure bonds, the reality of all of that, how it can, come to play in the market. It's something that they both agreed that they will also, going forward, start talking about. They also deliberate about minimum tax system in the market. Of course, concerns were raised about taxing retained earnings, taxing earnings that you have, even when you make losses in the market, the fact that you still have to, remit taxes to the federal government was a real concern for a lot of operators yesterday. These were the key issues that were tabled. The fact that you have a horizontal tax system on some already taxed funds. So these issues were raised, and the fiscal authorities agreed that going forward, they will discuss more with a lot of these operators. So that's what, that was the key, those were the key takeaways from that session yesterday, Bosun.
Yes, again, but of course, finally, in conclusion, the Honorable Minister, Okechukwu Ngelama says, well, we want your partnership. That sounds a bit more like a final campaign pitch. We want your partnership. We want you to support us. We need this collaboration. And they keep re-emphasizing partnership for the market. They said, because we can't do it alone, we need the market. That's true, isn't it?
Yes, it's true. I mean, he mentioned next level several times, more than 20 times yesterday, which is the slogan of his party. But then the CIS tried as much as possible to make this known to a lot of the attendees, that participants at that meeting, that, look, this was apolitical. It wasn't politically motivated. It was something that has been in the works for more than 2 years. They've been trying to engage with key players and key fiscal authority executives. It only happened incidentally at this point in time. So, a lot of traders that had their candidates, to also vote for still held on to that yesterday. For some, they remain convinced eventually.
Yes, Temple, Saturday is not far from here. It's just 6 days from now. But again, let's not talk about our markets. Let's just leave the politicians alone, shall we? What's the early numbers? Let's look into the, what's on the ticker tape? What have you seen? Temple, have you seen the ticker tape? What's the numbers? Oh, I guess we lost that there. I can't see the ticker tape from here. But of course, it's early hours within the first hour of opening bell on Nigerian Stock Exchange. We'll get all of that into our lunchtime Business Incorporated show. Got time. Spend some time, lunchtime with us. Chimezie Obiwago will be handling that in the afternoon. Temple Ashaji will bring us up to speed just before the closing bell. I'm boosting number 5. And this is the closing time for your business. I'll see you again tomorrow. Inflation day. Friday. GDP tomorrow. Big story, 8:30. Breakfast with me. I'm paying. The bill is on me. See you then.